Sometimes it seems like an impossible dream to find those serene, sun-drenched spots where we can take a breath and relax. More often we find an urban landscape imposed on a shifting bit of sand. And we've forgotten how it is to live with an island. But some places do remain, where man's footprint on nature has been both limited and thoughtful, and where one can find nature's treasures largely intact. Bald Head Island forms the very tip of North Carolina, that pointed bit of land that is Cape Fear. It's swept by the confused and dangerous currents of Frying Pan Shoals. And it borders the shipping channel of the Cape Fear River, where freighters make their way to and from the state port. Bald Head Island consists of a wide range of geography and habitat: seaside dunes, salt marshes, and old-growth maritime forest. Thousands of visitors flock here each year, and some 200 or more call it home year-round. So the island must withstand not only the whims of nature, but also contain the plans of man.
The remarkable thing about Bald Head is when the news broke that they were going to develop Bald Head, there was an outcry against it. And actually, I was in that group. When it became clear that it would be developed, it became obvious that these people were serious about doing a good job and having covenants that would protect the environment. Everything looked like it was as good as it would ever be. So we did go ahead. Quite honestly, I think we're very pleased with the way it has held together. This is 25 plus years later.
The key to Bald Head's balanced success has been the ability of its successive developers, including a few who went bust trying, to create and maintain a harmony between the things people need to thrive in a subtropical environment and the things the island itself needs to thrive. In that light, only 2,000 acres of Bald Head's 14,000 are developed.
We got here in '83. It was nice in that the master plan had a fair amount of green space in the first phase that was developed. We continued that trend, analyzing the dunes, the ocean, and forest, and where it'd be appropriate to build and where it'd be best not to build.
One decision made early on was priority protection of the spectacular maritime forest on the island's higher ground.
This is the Timmins oak tree. The Timmins oak is a sentinel oak in the Bald Head Island forest, and it performs a really important function. Its roots hold in the sand and hold in this ancient dune structure that's all around us here. The canopy actually joins hands with its neighboring trees, and in its joining hands, it can shear off hurricane-force winds. This particular maritime forest is so precious because it is still considered an old-growth forest. It's actually been designated as globally imperiled by the North Carolina Natural Heritage Program.
Old growth doesn't mean that man has never taken a hand at harvesting the place. Holes in the forest canopy here and there, and well-preserved stumps on the forest floor provide evidence of logging in the first half of the last century.
Red cedar was harvested actually to make pencils. And some of the historians say that in the 30s, at one point, all the pencils in the United States came from the Bald Head forest.
Dogwood also was harvested from this forest, valuable for its tight grain. It was used to make spools for our state's textile mills.
Another really important habitat when you're in a barrier island environment is our marsh environment. Salt marsh habitat is very important for nurseries for almost all of the important commercial fisheries in the state of North Carolina. It also serves to protect against hurricanes by absorbing storm surge and protecting not only barrier island habitats but far inshore as well. And it also has the amazing ability to distill pollutants. It can actually remove heavy metals from the water system.
If your idea of an oyster is a steaming plate of them ready to feast on, here's what they look like in the wild.
Oysters are one of the essential species in a salt marsh ecosystem. They provide food for certain animals, but their main role is as a filter. So anything that is in the water passes through the oysters as well, which is why oftentimes in highly developed areas, oysters may be off limits to eating for human consumption.
In a tidal creek one spring day, a somewhat more unusual sight appeared.
We've been watching a bottlenose dolphin having his breakfast this morning. He's been chasing fish, probably something like mullet. She's been rushing them up against the edge of the marsh bank along the oyster beds and put on quite a show for us this morning.
Nature itself is the feature presentation on Bald Head Island. Sometimes it's just watching wildlife around a freshwater pond. It might mean cleaning up after a storm, something no island can escape entirely. Or exploring other island dynamics, why a tree stump, for instance, appears in a place you wouldn't expect it.
Barrier islands are dynamic places, and the dune will shift. As the dune shifts, it reveals that it actually at one point was a forest. What we have here is a live oak stump that shows that this was once the site of a maritime forest.
On this island, people, place, and time seem to wrap themselves into one another, which is the way the development of Bald Head was envisioned from the start.
We, through our associations, enforce a strict clearing limits around each house. If you have a 24-inch tree that's 4 foot from your house, well, you have to live with it. You can trim it and prune it so it doesn't touch the house. You have to figure a way to work around it.
Most everything here is on pilings. By using pilings, you don't disturb any root structure except where one piling goes, and that's about this big around. Look at that tree in the deck there, probably 7,500-year-old live oak.
You might call this approach planning paradise, living with the island as much as on it, a philosophy embraced by both developer and citizenry, and apparent in two unusual ways. One, a strong and productive conservancy dedicated to natural preservation and education, especially concerning the local population of sea turtles. And two, a bias for electric versus gasoline-powered vehicles.
Of course, we have gasoline power for supplies, construction, emergency management, fire trucks, things like that, as well as our bus system. But electric vehicles is predominant use on this island.
The unwritten covenant here on Bald Head seems to be take it easy and enjoy life. Don't get yourself all worked up and in a hurry. And whether you're one of the 200-plus year-round residents or just a visitor to Bald Head, isn't that what living with an island is all about?